So once you have that done, you are ready for your power supply. So take your power supply, and we have our foot switch here. This particular power supply, foot switch goes in the bottom jack. Clip cord goes in either one of the top jacks depending on which setting you have this on. I have it on the left setting, which would be the top knob and coincide with the left jack. This has a positive and a negative lead on it, designated by the black and the red. That is actually not terribly important, whether you have the red on the top or red on the bottom. Either way you want to do it, it doesn't really matter. It's still going to create the same electrical circuit. So I'm going to go ahead. And now the post here on the back has a little hole in the bottom of it. And this little L-shaped metal piece coming out of the end of the clip cord wire slides into that hole. And there's a metal spring inside here which keeps this thing wanting to open. So you squeeze it shut, tilt your machine up, and there's another hole right by where the rear spring lines up, and you put it in there, and the spring is naturally going to keep tension on that and keep it in there in place. But it allows it a little bit of for movement. So as you're actually tattooing and moving in the machine around and getting your lines in there correctly or shading, it's going to allow the cord to kind of move around freely, so it'll minimize the amount of tension or force feedback on your hand. You know, you still have to get used to that because the machine is heavy and there still is a wire on there, so it is a little it does take a little bit to get used to, but you know, that little bit of movement does help you. So once you have that all set up, your machine, clip cord, foot switch, tube, all of that stuff, you are ready to turn it on. Now, each individual tattoo machine has different coil setups. These two little black things right here you see are coils. Now the coils are basically all it is. There's a piece of metal inside the center of this, and it's got wire wrapped around it. And the amount of layers there is of wiring is going to designate how strong the coil is going to be. Now different machine companies have different amounts of wraps. Some of them have variations, some of them have 10 wraps in the front and larger numbers in the back, or vice versa, or some of them have smaller numbers, some of them are even. And that's basically something that you kind of just you've got to feel for yourself. Certain machines work better for some people. You know, I particularly might have a machine that works great for me, but someone else might not like it at all. So what I started out with was all Mickey Sharp's machines. Mickey Sharp's is a really good, it's a workhorse. It's a very good industry standard for a machine. I've never had any problems with them whatsoever. But again, it is preference, you know. There are cheaper versions of machines, there are more expensive versions of machines. But basically, back to the coils, the amount of wraps is going to determine how strong the strong magnetic force is on these, and that's going to determine how hard and how fast the armature bar is spinning up and down. So once you have this all plugged in, power supply is on, you hit your foot switch, and it goes. And that is your basic general setup. Now there'll be another module where I go into more detail about machine theory, spring tension and whatnot, but that right there will just give you a basic overview of how to set up a tattoo machine. And as far as running it goes, it's going to sound differently when you actually dip it in ink than it is when you're running it dry. Now when you turn it down, you hear it get quieter. And you want to set it generally, you want to turn it up slowly until you hear it start to rattle or vibrate like that. that real fine metal pinging. That's too low. That's about just right. Now this particular power supply has a digital screen on it, and it'll tell you the amount of voltage you're running, so you can actually remember what that is and set it up for each machine. It's not terribly important, but it will give you a visual representation of, you know, the power each machine is running at. So once you have this all set up, machine plugged in, make sure it's running smooth, and you're ready to go for the rest of the setup.